The gravy boat slipped from my fingers before I even registered the words coming out of my son's mouth. It hit the edge of the table, spun once, and crashed onto the floor in an explosion of brown ceramic Shaw RDS and pooled gravy that spread like a dark stain across the white tile. "Called you what, my daughter-in-law?" Melissa set down her wine glass with a clink that sounded too loud in the suddenly quiet kitchen. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against the stem. She knew exactly what he'd said. She'd been the one to plant the seed weeks ago. I'd seen it in the way she looked at me across the dinner table, in the way she'd stopped calling me Mom, and sta root referring to me as Michael's mother. "You heard me." Michael didn't even look up from his phone. His thumb scrolled, swiped, scrolled again. 33 years old, making six figures at a tech firm, and he couldn't look his own mother in the face while calling her a useless burden. "You're just sitting there, taking up space. You don't contribute, you don't help, you just..." He finally glanced up, his eyes cold and flat. "You just exist. And it's expensive." The kitchen smelled like rosemary and garlic. I'd spent 4 hours preparing that meal. Pot roast with root vegetables, his favorite since he was a boy. The same recipe my mother taught me, the one I'd written down on an index card and tucked into my recipe box the I got my ride. Michael used to beg me to make it for his birthday. Now he sat at my table, no, his table, I had to remember that now, and called me a burden. "Your father's social security check doesn't even cover your medication," Melissa added, her voice sweet as Splenda. "We had to dip into our savings for that last prescription. You know we're saving for the wedding." Brian's wedding. My other son. The golden child who'd moved to Seattle and called once a month, if I was lucky. He was engaged to a girl named Stephanie who worked in marketing and had opinions about everything. They decided on a destination wedding in Cabo. $40,000 RS. Melissa had been reminding me of this fact for the past 6 months, like it was my responsibility to help fund it. "I'm sorry," I said, and my voice came out smaller than I'd intended. "I didn't realize." "Of course you didn't realize." Michael finally put down his phone and leaned four-way RD, elbows on the table. He looked like his father in that moment. The same Shaw RP jaw, the same impatient set to his mouth. Robert had been impatient too. He'd died impatient, sitting in his recliner with the TV remote in his hand, and his last words about how the game was taking too long. "You never realize. You just sit in your room all day and watch your shows. You don't see you're okay, you don't clean, you don't do anything. All you do is cost money." I looked at the pot roast I'd made, the mashed potatoes I'd peeled by hand, the green beans I'd trimmed and blanched and sautéed with slivered almonds, the lemon meringue pie ling on the counter. 4 hours of work, and he'd be a rely touched it. "Your father left me some. Dad left you nothing." Michael's voice was Shaw RP. "We all know that. The house is in my name, the CAR is in Brian's. You've got Social Security and a life insurance policy, that's basically nothing." I'd never told him about the trust. Robert had made me promise. "Keep it quiet, Alice. Money changes people. You tell them and they'll start treating you different." I'd nodded along, thinking he was being paranoid. Robert had been a cautious man. He'd worked 40 years in the same factory, saved his pennies, invested fully. The trust was his insurance policy. Insurance that I'd be taken of. "Look," Melissa said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. Her touch was cold. "We're not saying we want to throw you out, but you need to understand the position we're in. Brian's wedding is going to cost more than we thought, and with the housing market the way it is, we can't sell your room to a BOA writer like we'd planned." My room. The room I'd slept in for 15 years. The room where I'd nursed Michael through his first asthma attack, where I taught Brian to read, where Robert and I had celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary with champagne and strawberries. My room. "You want to sell my room?" "We're not saying that." Michael picked up his wine glass and drained it. "We're saying that if you can't contribute, you need to find other arrangements. There's a place, a senior facility over on Maple. They have a Shaw Red Room available. It's subsidized. A Shaw Red Room. With a stranger. At a place I'd driven past 100 times, where they wheeled the residents out onto the front porch in the summer and lined them up like potted plants. I'm 68, I said. I'm not. You're not getting any younger. Melissa's voice was matter-of-fact. And you can't take CA of yourself. We saw what happened last month with the stove. The stove. I'd left a burner on. Just once. One mistake, and they'd used it as Exhibit A in their case for my incompetence. I'd been distracted that day, thinking about Robert, about how he used to stand in the kitchen and tell me I was a good seed okay. How he'd come up behind me and wrap his arms around my waist while I stirred the soup. I'd been thinking about that, and the burner had stayed on for an hour. Nothing caught fire. Nothing burned. But they'd made it into something. I'm not going to a facility, I said. The words came out stronger than I expected. I'm staying here. This is my home. It's not your home anymore. Michael stood up, pushing his chair back, so hard it scraped the floor. It's my home. I pay the mortgage. I pay the utilities. I pay for the food you eat and the electricity you use. And I'm tired of it. Do you understand? I'm tired of coming home to find you sitting in the living room watching your shows, tired of listening to you talk about the neighbor's cat like it's something important. You don't contribute. You just take. He walked out of the kitchen. He heard his feet stomping up the stairs. A door slammed. Melissa looked at me with something that might have been pity if it hadn't been so cold. He doesn't mean it, she said, but her voice suggested otherwise. He's just stressed about work. The wedding. Everything. Maybe you should think about that facility. I got up from the table. My legs were shaking. I walked to the counter and picked up the lemon meringue pie. I right it to the trash can and let it drop. It landed with a soft thud, the meringue cracking. I'd spent 40 minutes beating the egg whites. My arms still ached. Alice, Melissa said. We need to talk about this. We can't keep. Not tonight, I said. I'm tired. I went in my room. My room. I closed the door and stood there in the dark, listening to my own breathing. The walls were pale yellow. Robert had painted them himself, back when Michael was just a baby. He'd said yellow was a happy color, a color for a child's room. But Michael had grown up and moved to the bigger room at the end of the hall, and I'd stayed here in the nursery with my yellow walls and my memories. I pulled the box from under the bed. It was old, wooden, with a brass clasp. I'd had it since I was 22. My mother gave it to me the day I got married. For your treasures, she'd said. I'd kept it in the closet for decades. Robert had known about it. He'd called it my hope chest. Inside, birth certificates, marriage license, property deeds, the key to the safe deposit box, and the documents. The thick manila envelope with attorney eyes only stamped in red. I'd never opened it. Robert had said to wait. Until you need it, he'd said. Until there's no other way. I held the envelope in my hands. It was heavier than I expected. I could feel the weight of it, the RS of secrecy. Robert had been the only one who knew. He'd set it up when Michael was born, when Brian was just a toddler. I'll take care of you, he'd promised. No matter what. I sat on the edge of the bed, the envelope in my lap, and remembered the last time I'd seen him. He'd been sitting in his recliner, the football game on. He'd looked over at me and smiled. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, he'd said. You know that. I'd thought he was just being sweet. He had a way of saying things at random, soft words that dropped into the silence, like stones into water. I'd never counted them as prophecies. Let's go, Alice, Melissa called from outside the door. I'm taking you to look at the place tomorrow. I've already made the appointment. I didn't answer. I opened the envelope instead. The documents were old, official, full of legal language I'd never read to understand. But the numbers were clear. The numbers were very clear. I looked at the door. I could hear Melissa's footsteps in the hallway. I imagined her coming in, her voice sweet and relentless, telling me about the facility, about how much better it would be for me, how I'd make friends and play bingo and not be a burden anymore. I looked back at the papers in my hands. Tomorrow, I said quietly. We'll go tomorrow. But I didn't mean the facility. I meant the attorney's office. The safe deposit box. The trust that Robert had built. The one I'd kept quiet for 33 years. I meant the beginning of something they'd never see coming. I slid the documents back into the envelope and tucked it into my purse. Then I lay down on the bed in my yellow room and closed my eyes. I could hear Melissa's footsteps retreating. I could hear the TV downstairs, some reality show about housewives. I could hear Michael's voice on the phone, laughing about something. He wasn't stressed. He wasn't worried. He'd already written me off. I thought about Robert's voice. Until you need it. I'd never needed it before. I'd never felt like a burden. I'd raised 2 boys. I'd kept a home. I'd sieved and cleaned and worried and prayed. I'd been a wife, a mother, a person with value. But Michael had looked at me tonight and seen a drain, an expense, a nuisance taking up space. He wasn't entirely wrong about the numbers. Social Security didn't cover much. Medicare paid for some of the medication, but not all. I had savings, but not enough to live on for years. I'd given everything I had to the family. I'd helped with Michael's college. I'd co-signed on Brian's first CAR. I'd mortgaged myself in 1,000 small ways over the years, always believing that family was an investment, that love came back to you. But Melissa had already made the appointment. A facility. A Shaw Red room. They'd already decided my future for me. That's what bothered me most, I realized. Not the money, not the label, but the assumption. The assumption that I had no voice. No choice. No say in how my life would end. Mike. Melissa called from the bottom of the stairs. Did you call the insurance company about the claim? I'll do it tomorrow, he yelled back. Let's just go to bed. I heard their footsteps on the stairs, their laughter as they passed my door. They didn't stop. They didn't knock. They walked past like I was already gone, and I lay there for a long time, listening to the house settle around me. The creak of the floorboard RDS. The hum of the refrigerator. The distant sound of a siren somewhere in the city. I thought about Robert's hands, the way they'd felt around mine when we'd stood in front of the judge and promised to love each other forever. I thought about the day Michael was born, the weight of him in my arms, the way his tiny fingers curled around my thumb. I thought about teaching Brian to ride a bike, running beside him with my hand on the seat, letting go when he didn't even notice. I thought about the documents in my purse, the safe deposit box, the attorney's name and address, written in Robert's full hand, the numbers that added up to something I'd never dared to imagine. At 2:17 a.m., I got up. I dressed quietly in jeans and a sweater, comfortable shoes. I packed a small bag with clothes and medication and the photo album I'd kept on my nightstand. I put the documents in my purse and slung the bag over my shoulder. Did I open my door? The hallway was dark. I could hear Michael's snores from his room, Melissa's soft breathing. I walked past their door and down the stairs. My legs felt steady. My heart was calm. I stopped in the kitchen to write a note. I looked at the trash can where the pie was still resting, a sad yellow mound of wasted effort. I took a piece of paper from the drawer and wrote, I'm going to get my things. I'll be fine.
Don't worry about me.
Mom. I left it on the kitchen table, weighted by the gravy-splattered napkin. Then I walked out the front door. The air was cold. The street was quiet. I got into my old Honda and turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, caught. I pulled out of the driveway without looking back. I drove to a motel near the highway. I paid cash for one night. The clerk didn't ask questions. He handed me a key, pointed me to room 112. I locked the door, sat on the bed, and opened the envelope again. I took out the attorney's CA Road, Richard Road Thompson, Esquire. Estate planning. Trusts and probate. The number was still good. I'd called it once years ago, just to make sure. Robert had told me to. I looked at the clock.
3:45 a.m.
2 EARLY to call. I'd wait until 8. I'd go to the bank. I'd open the safe deposit box. And then I'd see exactly what Robert had left me. Exactly what I was worth. I lay back on the motel bed, the blanket scratchy and thin. I read at the ceiling. There was a water stain shaped like a cloud. The room smelled faintly of bleach and smoke. I thought about Michael's face when he'd said it. Useless burden. The words hung in the air like they'd been read into something permanent. That was how he saw me. That was what I'd become to him. I thought about Brian's wedding. $40,000 RS. A destination wedding in Cabo. Melissa's obsession with it. The way she'd used it like a weapon, like a reason. And Brian, off in Seattle, so busy with his life and his engagement and his plans, so far from the mother who'd once held his hand and told him he could be anything. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was a burden. Maybe I'd outlived my usefulness. But I wasn't useless. That much I knew. I'd loved them. I'd given them everything. I'd emptied myself out for them, hour after hour. If that was useless, then so was every mother who'd ever loved a child. I closed my eyes and waited for the sun. When the alarm on my phone went off at 7 a.m., I was already awake. I showered. I dressed. I called the attorney's office. Mr. Thompson's office. A woman's voice answered. "This is Alice Bennett," I said. "Robert Bennett's wife. I need to see him today." I could hear the pause. The click of a keyboard. Road, Mrs. Bennett, she said.
Yes.
"Robert mentioned you might call. He said to tell you. He has everything ready. Can you come in this morning? I said, 11 o'clock. I agreed. I hung up. I packed my bag. I left the room, key on the dresser. I walked out into the morning light. The air smelled like damp pavement and cigar exhaust. The sky was gray, clouds threatening rain. It was just another day in the city. But it wasn't. Not anymore. I was done being quiet. I was done being invisible. I was done with being called a burden and nodding along. I got into my car and drove Tawa, RD the bank. The safe deposit box, key felt solid in my hand. It was old, brass, with a number on it that I'd memorized years ago. The bank was quiet. A teller led me to the vault, checked my ID, handed me the box. I took it to a small room with a table and a chair. The lid creaked when I opened it. Inside, a binder, a thick one, full of statements and documents. I flipped through the pages. Account balances, property holdings, investment portfolios, trust documents, numbers that made my head spin. Robert's note was on top, written in his refill hand, the same handwriting I'd seen on grocery lists and birthday cards and love notes for 42 years. "Alice, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I meant to tell you myself. But I knew if I told you, you'd never stop. You're so generous, my love. You'd have given it all away. I couldn't let you do that. This is yours. It's always been yours. Take of yourself. Love, Robert." I closed the binder. I pressed it to my chest. I could feel the weight of it, the RS of secrecy, the love that had planned and protected and prepared. I put the binder in my bag. I walked out of the bank. I drove to the attorney's office. Richard Thompson was waiting for me. He was tall, gray-haired, with kind eyes. He shook my hand and led me into his office. He sat me down across from his desk. "Alice," he said. "Robert was a good friend. He told me everything. About the family, about the boys, about what he expected." And he slid a document across the desk. "The trust is substantial. Robert invested well. Very well." He paused, as if he were preparing me for something. "The total value is enough to purchase the house outright. Enough to cover Brian's wedding 10 times over. Enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life." I read at the number. I couldn't process it. It was richer than I'd ever imagined. "Why?" I asked. "Why didn't he tell them?" "Because he knew," Thompson said gently. "He knew what money does to people. He knew that his boys would treat you differently if they knew. And he loved you enough to protect you from that." I thought about Michael's face, Melissa's cold sweetness, Brian's distance. They'd looked at me and seen a burden. They'd made their plans around my Desape rants. They'd written me off. "Can I buy the house?" I asked. "You can buy anything you want." "Not for me," I said. "For myself. To live in. To keep." Thompson nodded. "It's yours. But Alice, you have to be certain. This will change things." "I know," I said. "They already changed things. They had their chance." I stood up. I shook Thompson's hand. I walked out of his office and into the street. I thought about Michael's face when he'd call me that word. I thought about Melissa's cold smile. I thought about Brian in Seattle, too busy to call his mother. I thought about the yellow room, the room I'd raised them in, the room where I'd slept for 15 years. I thought about what I'd say when I walked back in. Not angry, not vengeful.
Just calm.
Just certain. The sun broke through the clouds as I got into my car. I pulled out my phone. I called the attorney again. I need to make a purchase, I said. A house. My house. The real estate agent looked at me like I'd just asked her to sell me the moon. Mrs. Bennett, you want to make an offer on a property you already live in? That's right, I said. I want to buy it. She was young, maybe 30, with the kind of polished efficiency that came from years of dealing with difficult clients. Her name was Jennifer, and she'd been assigned to me after I walked into the office and asked to see the listing for my own address. She'd pulled it up on her screen with a confused frown. The property had been listed as a private sale, the owner's name redacted. But I knew who the owner was. I knew because I'd paid the mortgage for 20 years before Michael had taken it over, and I remembered every single payment slip I'd ever mailed to the bank. The current owner is your son, correct? And you want to buy it from him?
Correct.
She tapped her pen against the desk. Mrs. Bennett, with all due respect, the assessed value of this property is significant. It's NEARLY double what he paid for it, if the records are accurate. Then he should be happy to sell it to me, I said. Especially since I'm offering above market value. She blinked. Above market value. I slid the check across the desk. It was from the trust account, already clear red, already signed. The amount was enough to make her eyes go wide. I want to close by the end of the week, I said. I'll handle all the legal fees. I just need you to make the offer. She looked at the check, then at me, then back at the check. Mrs. Bennett, this is almost $400,000 above market. Correct. May I ask why? I smiled. It wasn't a RM smile. It was the smile of a woman who'd spent 33 years giving and giving and giving until she'd forgotten what it felt like to take. Because I want to make sure he can't refuse. Jennifer made the call that afternoon. I waited in her office, sipping the Look UARM coffee she'd offered me. I could hear her voice through the door, professional and calm. Yes, Mr. Bennett. I have an offer on your property. A pause. No, it's not from a bank. It's from a private buyer. Another pause. I can't disclose that information at this time, but I can tell you the offer is for significantly more than your asking price. I imagine Michael's face, the confusion, the sudden greed, Melissa in the background, whispering, pushing. I knew them both so well. I knew their weak points, their triggers, their ambitions. I'd watched them for years, and I'd never once used that knowledge. Never once held it over them. But that was before Jennifer came back into the room with a smile on her face. He's agreed to a meeting, she said. Tonight. At the property. Perfect, I said. I'll be there. I spent the afternoon at a coffee shop the attorney's office. I had my binder with me, the one from the safe deposit box. I read through the documents again, making sure I understood everything. The trust was more complicated than I'd realized. Robert hadn't just left me money. He'd left me property, investments, a portfolio that had grown steadily for decades. And he'd structured it so that I could access it without anyone else's permission, without anyone else's knowledge. Your husband was a very reeful man, Richard Road Thompson had said when I'd asked him about it. He told me once that he'd rather you live like a queen in secret than like a beggar in public. He didn't trust his boys to take care of you. He didn't trust anyone but you. I'd cried a little when he'd said that. Not because I was sad. Because I was grateful. Because Robert had seen something I hadn't. He'd seen the future. He'd seen the moment when my sons would turn on me, would call me a burden and try to push me aside. And he'd prepared for it. At 6 p.m., I drove back to the house. I parked on the street and sat in my car for a long moment. The house looked the same as always. White siding, blue shutters, a small porch with 2 rocking chairs. Robert had bought those chairs at a yard sale years ago. He'd refinished them himself, sanding down the wood and painting them the same shade of blue as the shutters. I'd spent so many evenings in those chairs, watching the sunset, watching the neighbors walk their dogs, watching my boys grow up, and now the house was Michael's, and I was about to buy it back. I walked up the front steps and rang the bell. Michael opened the door. His face was a mix of confusion and concealed greed. "Mom, what are you doing here?" the realtor said. "Good evening, Michael," I said. "Melissa." She was behind him, her arms crossed, her expression gua-eyed. "Where did you go last night? I was worried sick." "No, you weren't," I said. "But thank you for pretending." I walked past them into the living room. The same old couch, the same rug, the same photographs on the mantel. Robert's face smiled at me from frame. I'd put that picture there the day after his funeral, and I'd never moved it. "Mrs. Bennet," Jennifer said, a ring from the kitchen. She was holding a tablet and a pen. "Mr. Bennet has agreed to consider your offer. I just need you to confirm a few details." Michael's eyes went wide. "You're the buyer, I'm the buyer," I said calmly. "This is a joke." He laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it. "You don't have that kind of money. You can afford your medication." "You don't know what I can afford," I said. "You never ask." Melissa stepped forward. Her voice had that sweet edge that I'd come to recognize as her weapon. "Alice, if this is some kind of protest, some kind of stunt to make us feel guilty." "It's not a stunt," I said. "It's a business transaction. You wanted to sell my room. I want to buy the house. It's that simple." Jennifer was looking between us like she was watching a tennis match. "Mrs. Bennet, I need your signature on this document. It's the offer letter." I signed it. I handed it to her. She passed it to Michael. He read it. His face went pale. "This is above market value," he said. "By a lot." "I know. Why would you pay this much?" I looked at him. I looked at his face. The same face I'd looked at every day for 33 years. The face I'd kissed goodnight and scolded and comforted and loved. And I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pain. I just felt tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of being taken for granted. Tired of being a burden. "Because I want you to know that I can," I said. "Because I want you to think about that word you used last night. Useless burden. And I want you to wonder who the useless one really was." "But the wedding," Melissa said. "We were going to use the money from the house sale to pay for the wedding." I turned to her. "Then you'll have it," I said. "You'll have more than enough to pay for that wedding. You'll have more than enough to buy a bigger house. You'll have more than enough to start over somewhere else. Because this house is mine. It was always mine. I paid for it. I raised your husband in it. And I'm not leaving it." Michael's hand was shaking. He was still holding the offer letter. "Mom, you can't do this. You can't just—" "I can," I said. "And I will. Unless you want to reconsider your position." "Reconsider what?" "Whether I'm really a burden. Whether I'm really useless. Whether you want to keep your mother in your life, or whether you'd rather take the money and never see me again." He didn't answer. He couldn't. I could see the calculation happening in his mind, the same calculation that had been happening for months. Money or mother. Cash or compassion. Greed or guilt. "I want the house," I said. "I want my room. I want to live out my life in peace. And if you can't respect that, if you can't treat me like a human being instead of a problem to be solved, then you can take the money and go." Jennifer Clea read her throat. "Mr. Bennet, do you accept the offer?" Michael looked at Melissa. She nodded. He looked at the offer letter. He looked at me. "Fine," he said. "Take it. Take the whole damn house." "I don't see a re." I could hear the lie in his voice. He did see a re. He read very much. But he was too proud to admit it, too stubborn to back down. He'd already made his choice. He'd already decided that money was worth more than his mother. "Good," I said. "Then I'll have the paperwork finalized by the end of the week." "And Michael, what? Don't expect an invitation to the house remain." I walked out of the living room. I walked up the stairs. I passed his room, Melissa's room, the guest room. I opened the door to my yellow room. It was still there. Still untouched. Still mine. I stood in the middle of the room and looked at the walls. The pale yellow that Robert had painted all those years ago. The scuffs and dings from decades of living. The window that looked out onto the backyard, where I'd watched the boys play, where I'd watched Robert tend to his garden. I sat down on the bed and sta rude to cry. Not because I was sad, because I was relieved. Because for the first time in months I felt like myself again. I felt like Alice. Not a mother, not a wife, not a burden. Just Alice. I pulled out my phone and called Brian. Mom, his voice was surprised. Is everything okay? You never call this late. I'm fine, I said. Better than fine. I just wanted to tell you some news. What news? I bought the house. There was a long pause. You bought what house? The one I live in. Michael's house. I bought it from him. Mom, that's impossible. You don't have that kind of money. I do, I said. Your father left it for me. I've had it all along. I just never told anyone. Dad left you money. Not just money. A trust. A big one. Enough to take care of me for the rest of my life. Enough to keep me from ever being a burden to anyone. Burden, Mom. You're not a burden. Tell that to Michael. He called me one last night. Called me a useless burden. Right to my face. Brian was quiet. I could hear him breathing. Could hear his fiancée talking in the background.
Mom, I'm sorry.
I didn't know. He never said anything.
Of course he didn't, I said.
He wouldn't. He wanted to ship me off to a facility. He and Melissa had it all planned. A Shaw-Red room.
Subsidized.
They didn't want to deal with me anymore. Mom, that's insane. I'll call him. Don't, I said. I'm handling it. I'm handling everything. I just wanted you to know. I wanted you to hear it from me, not from him. Mom, I had no idea. I've been so busy with work, with the wedding. I know, I said. I know you've been busy. But Brian, I need you to be honest with me. Did you know about the plan? Did you know they were going to send me away? No, he said quickly.
No. Isfar.
I would never have let that happen. Would you? Because you haven't called in 6 weeks. You didn't come home for Easter. You didn't even send a CA road. I could hear the guilt in his voice. The weight of it.
Mom, I'm sorry.
I've been terrible. I know I have. But I'll do better. I promise. We'll see, I said. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm not a burden. I'm not useless. I'm your mother. And I deserve better. You do, he said. You deserve everything. I know, I said. That's why I'm taking it. I hung up. I lay back on the bed and sta read at the ceiling. The yellow was fading. The paint was chipping.
But it was still my room.
It was still my home. And no one was going to take it from me ever again. I heard a knock on the door. Mom, Michael's voice. He sounded small. Mom, can I come in? Go away, Michael. Please. I want to talk. We've talked enough. You said what you needed to say. Mom, I didn't mean it. I was angry. I was stressed. I didn't.
You meant it, I said.
You meant every word. And I'm done pretending you didn't. I heard him walk away. I heard his footsteps on the stairs. I heard the front door open and close. He was gone. They were both gone. They'd left me alone in my house, just like they'd planned to do all along. But this time, I wasn't the one leaving. I got up from the bed. I walked to the window and looked out at the backyard road. The garden was overgrown. The weeds were thick. I hadn't had the energy to see a for it since Robert died. But I would now. I had time. I had money. I had everything I needed. I walked downstairs. The house was quiet. The kitchen was clean, except for the trash can where the pie was still resting. I fished it out. It was ruined. But I didn't see a I'd make another one tomorrow. I'd make a dozen. I'd fill the house with the smell of baking and the sound of my own footsteps. I'd live out my RS in peace. I sat down in Robert's recliner, the same one he'd died in. I leaned back and closed my eyes. I could almost feel him there, could almost hear his voice. You did it, he whispered. I knew you would. I love you, I said. I miss you, I know, he said. I know. I opened my eyes. The room was empty, but the feeling stayed. The comfort, the assurance. I was not alone. I had never been alone. I'd just forgotten how much I could do for myself. I pulled out my phone and STA route making calls. A GA redener. A painter. A handyman. I was going to fix this house. I was going to make it beautiful again. I was going to live in it and love it and never let anyone take it from me. By the time I fell asleep in Robert's chair, I had it all planned. The renovations. The GA reden. The new life I was going to build. A life where I was the one in control. A life where I was never called a burden again. The doorbell rang at 7:32 a.m. I knew because I was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the blueprints I'd pulled from the attic. I'd been planning the renovations for 2 hours. The GA reden would come first. Then the kitchen. Then the bedroom. I opened the door to find Melissa standing on the porch. She was wearing workout clothes and a face full of desperation. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her mascara smudged. She looked like she hadn't slept. Alice, she said. We need to talk. We already talked, I said. You made your position very clear. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I stepped aside. She walked in, her heels clicking on the floor I'd mopped 1,000 times. She stood in the living room like she'd never seen it before, looking at the furniture, the photographs, the rug. Everything was the same. Nothing had changed. Michael's been up all night, she said. He's sick. He couldn't stop throwing up. That sounds like a personal problem. Alice, please. This isn't like you. You've always been kind. You've always been understanding. I've always been a doormat, I said. That's what you're trying to say, isn't it? I've always let you walk all over me. I've always nodded and smiled and pretended everything was fine. But I'm done pretending. I'm done with all of it. She flinched. I saw it. The little recoil. The flash of something that might have been guilt if she'd had the capacity for it. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Melissa, you came here to tell me that Michael is sick. That he's upset. That he regrets what he said. I walked closer to her. I could see her pulse beating in her throat. But does he regret it? Or does he just regret the consequences? She didn't answer. She just stood there with her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes rooting around the room like she was looking for an exit. Let me tell you something about consequences, I said. Your son, my son, called me a useless burden. He told me I didn't contribute. He told me I was expensive. He told me to my face that I was nothing but a drain on his resources. And you sat there and let him. You didn't stop him. You didn't defend me. You just nodded along and made sure I knew that you agreed. Alice, I never said. You didn't have to. Your silence said everything. You had your chance to be kind. You chose not to take it. I walked into the kitchen. She followed me. I could hear her footsteps, hesitant, uncertain. The power dynamic had shifted. She could feel it. She was the one who needed something now. She was the one who'd come crawling. The wedding, she said. We can't afford the wedding without the money from the house. Then don't have the wedding, I said. Postpone it. Downsize it. Do what every other couple does when they don't have a mother to fund their lavish dreams. That's not fair. We already made the deposits. We already booked the venue. You already made the assumption that I'd be dead or in a home before the wedding, I said. You already assumed you'd have my money to spend. You already built your entire plan around my disappearance. She opened her mouth, closed it. I could see the HARS turning in her head, trying to find the right angle, the right manipulation. She'd always been good at that. She'd always known exactly which buttons to push. The house, she said finally. You've already signed the papers. You've already made the offer. But we don't have to go through with it. We can still pretend you didn't try to throw me out, still pretend you didn't make plans for my room before I was even gone, still pretend you're good people who re about their mother. Alice, I know you're angry. I understand. I would be angry too. But we're family. We have to find a way to make this work. I laughed. It came out sharp and bitter, the sound of a woman who'd been pushed too far. Family. That's a good word. Family means taking care of each other. Family means not calling your mother a useless burden. Family means being there when it matters.
You didn't do any of that.
So don't stand here and talk to me about family. Then what are you going to do, You just going to cut us off forever, you going to pretend you don't have children? I thought about that. I thought about Michael's face, Brian's voice. I thought about all the hours I'd given them, the sleepless nights, the extra shifts at the diner, the sacrifices I'd made so they could have something better. I don't know, I said. But I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to let you make me feel guilty for refusing to be mistreated. Melissa sta root to cry. The TRS came slow at first, then faster. She was good at crying. She'd always been good at crying. But I'd seen her cry before. I'd seen her cry when she didn't get the CAR she wanted. I'd seen her cry when Michael told her he couldn't afford that vacation. I'd seen her use TRS like a weapon. And I was done being fooled by them. I'm going to ask you to leave, I said. Alice, please. The door is over there. Use it. She didn't move. She just stood there crying. I walked to the front door and opened it. The morning air rushed in, cold and clean. Goodbye, Melissa. She walked out. She didn't say anything else. She just walked to her CAR, got in and drove away. I watched her go. I watched until her CAR disappeared red around the corner, then I closed the door and leaned against it. I was shaking.
I didn't know why.
I'd said what I needed to say. I'd stood my ground. But I was still shaking. The adrenaline was still pumping through my veins. I went back to the kitchen and sat down. My coffee was cold. I poured it out and made another cup. I sat at the table with the blueprints and forced myself to focus. The GA Reden, the repairs, the life I was building. I had to think about that. I had to focus on the future, but I couldn't stop thinking about Michael's face. The way he'd looked when I told him I was buying the house. The way he'd faltered. The way he'd tried to backtrack. He knew he'd made a mistake. He knew he'd crossed a line.
But did he understand why?
Did he understand that he'd broken something that couldn't be fixed? I didn't know. And I didn't have the energy to figure it out. At 10 a.m., the handyman arrived. His name was Frank. He was in his 50s, with a thick mustache and a kindly face. He looked at the list of repairs I'd made and nodded. Your husband used to call me for small jobs, he said. He was a good man, Robert. Always paid on time. Always talked about you. He was a good man. I agreed. He told me once that you were the only thing that kept him sane. Said he'd do anything for you. Said he'd move mountains. I felt the TRS coming. I blinked them back. He was always like that. He always made me feel special. He was lucky to have you, Frank said. And you were lucky to have him. That's that kind of love. I nodded. I couldn't speak. I was too busy trying to keep myself together. Frank sta root on the GA Reden. I watched him from the kitchen window. He worked slowly, methodically, pulling weeds and trimming bushes. The GA Reden was coming back to life. It was growing. It was healing. I thought about my own life. The years I'd given to my sons. The years I'd spent being a mother, a wife, a CA taker. I'd given everything to them. And they'd taken it all, every single piece of it, and they'd asked for more. But I was done giving, done serving, done being invisible. I made a decision. I pulled out my phone and called Richard Thompson. Alice, he said. Good to hear from you. How are you doing? I'm doing well, I said. I need to make a change. Change to the trust. I want to update the beneficia rise. There was a pause. Alice, that's a significant decision. You should take time to think about it. I've thought about it, I said. I've thought about it long enough. Can I ask what prompted this? They called me a useless burden, I said. They planned to put me in a facility. They wanted to sell my room. My son, the one I raised, the one I sacrificed for, he looked me in the eye and told me I was nothing. And I realized something. I realized that I don't owe them anything. They've taken everything I had to give. And I'm done giving. Richard was quiet for a long time. Alice, I understand your anger. I do. But this is a permanent decision. You can't undo it. I don't want to undo it. I want to make sure they never get another cent from me. Who do you want to name as the beneficiary? I thought about it. I thought about the church I'd attended for 40 years, the local food bank, the scholarship fund for girls who wanted to go to college, the animal shelter that had found homes for 3 of my rescue dogs, the foundation, I said. The one Robert set up. I want it all to go there. That's a significant amount of money, Alice. The foundation is for local families in need. I know. That's why I'm choosing it. I want to help people who need it, not people who think they deserve it. Richard sighed. I could hear the weight of his breath. I'll draw up the paperwork. But Alice, I want you to be absolutely certain. I am, I said. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I hung up. I walked out into the backyard road. Frank was still working his back to me. The garden was beginning to look like itself again. The flowers were coming back. The roses were blooming. I thought about Michael. I thought about the day he was born. The first time I held him in my arms. The way he'd looked at me with those tiny eyes, like I was the whole universe. I'd promised myself that I'd never let anything hurt him, that I'd protect him from everything, but I hadn't protected him from himself. I hadn't taught him to be kind. I hadn't taught him to value the people who loved him. I'd given him everything, and he'd reneged nothing. I don't know how long I stood there. Frank finished his work and said goodbye. I waved him off. I didn't move. I just stood in the garden with the sun on my face and the wind in my hair. I think that was the moment I let go. The moment I stopped being a mother and being a woman. The moment I realized that I didn't have to keep giving, that I could take, that I could finally be the one who got something in return. The phone rang at 6 p.m. Brian's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring, let it go to voicemail. He called again 5 minutes later. I didn't answer that time either, that I wasn't ready to talk to him. I wasn't ready to hear his apologies or his excuses or his explanations. I needed time. I needed space. I needed to figure out who I was without them. I went inside and made myself dinner. A simple meal, a small portion. I sat at the table and ate it slowly, savoring every bite. The kitchen was quiet. The house was still. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I was fine. After dinner, I called Frank and asked him to come back the next day. I was going to paint the yellow room. I was going to change it, make it mine. I was going to erase the hours of waiting and hoping and pretending. I picked up a brush and began to paint. The yellow disappeared red under a coat of white, then blue. A soft, calm blue that reminded me of the sky on a summer day. I painted until my arms ached. I painted until I couldn't lift the brush anymore. And when I was done, I looked at the room and felt a strange sense of peace. This was my room now, not the nursery, not the room where I'd waited for my children to come back to me. This was my room, my space, my life. I sat on the bed and picked up my phone. There were 7 missed calls from Brian, 4 from Michael, and a text from Melissa. Please call us. We need to talk about this. I typed back. There's nothing to talk about. I've made my decision. I turned off my phone and went to sleep. The knock on the door came at 8:15 the next morning. I knew it wasn't Frank because Frank had already called to say he'd be late.
His truck had broken down, he said.
He'd be here by noon. I opened the door and found my father-in-law standing on the porch. I hadn't seen rolled in 3 years. Not since Robert's funeral, when he'd stood at the graveside with his hands in his pockets and his face like stone. He was 76 now, his hair completely white, his shoulders stooped. He wore the same plaid shirt he'd worn to every family gathering for the past 20 years. The same work boots, scuffed and worn. The same look of grim determination that I'd always associated with Robert's father. Alice, he said, we need to talk. I stepped aside. He walked in, slow and careful. His knees were bad, I remembered. He'd had surgery on one, refused the other. Stubborn, like his son, like his grandson. Rolled, I said. This is unexpected. I know. I should have called. But I didn't think you'd pick up.
He was right.
I wouldn't have. He stood in the living room looking around. His eyes landed on the photographs on the mantel. Robert's face.
The boys.
A picture of me on our wedding day. He read at that one for a long time. You've changed, he said. People do. I'm not talking about the house.
I'm talking about you.
You've changed. I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. Michael called me, he said. Last night.
He's a wreck.
He can't eat. He can't sleep. He doesn't know what to do.
Good, I said.
Maybe that's what he needs. Rold turned to look at me. His eyes were the same as Robert's. That same shade of blue. That same way of looking through you like he was seeing something you couldn't. You're angry, he said. I understand. Do you really understand what he said to me? I do. He told me. He told me everything. I felt my breath catch. And, what did you think? Rold was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down in the A-room chair across from me. He winced as he sat, his hand going to his knee. I think he's an idiot. I think he's been led around by that woman for years. And I think he doesn't know what he's lost until it's gone. That's not an answer. It's the truth. It's the only answer I have. I sat down across from him. The coffee table was between us, cluttered with the blueprints and paint samples I'd been looking at. He picked up one of the samples. See, foam green. He turned it over in his hands. You're painting, he said. I'm rebuilding. Good. This place needs it. Robert always said he'd get around to it, but he never did. Robert was busy, I said. He was working. He was providing. I know. That's what he did. That's what he was. A provider. A protector. He didn't know how to be anything else. Rold put down the paint sample.
He loved you, Alice.
More than anything.
He told me that once.
We were fishing, just the two of us. He said you were the best thing that ever happened to him. I felt the tears coming. I pushed them down. He was a good man.
He was.
He was a better man than me. He learned how to love. I never did. I looked at my father-in-law. I'd spent 40 years knowing him, and I'd never once heard him say anything like that. He was a stoic man.
Silent. Distant.
Robert had always been the one who talked. Rold was the one who listened. Michael wants to apologize, Rold said. He wanted to come with me, but I told him no. I told him he couldn't just show up and say he was sorry and expect everything to be fixed. Good, I said. Because he couldn't.
He knows that.
He knows he messed up. He knows he went too far. But Alice, he's your son. You can't just cut him out of your life. Can't I? You can. You can do whatever you want. You've got the money. You've got the house. You don't need anyone. But that doesn't mean you have to be alone. I thought about that. I thought about the empty house. The quiet kitchen. The silence that would settle over everything when the renovations were done. I'm not alone, I said. I have Robert. I have his memory. I have the life we built together. That's not the same, Alice. You know it's not. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Michael wants to talk to you, Rold said. He wants to explain himself. Explain himself. There's nothing to explain.
He said what he said.
He did what he did. He made his choice.
He knows that.
He's not asking for forgiveness. He's just asking for a chance to tell you his side of the story. I laughed. It came out harsh and bitter. His side of the story. What story? The story of how he and Melissa sat at this table and planned to get rid of me. The story of how they called me a burden and told me to go to a facility. I don't need to hear that story again. I was there. I lived it.
Harold nodded.
He didn't argue. He just nodded. Robert was the same way, he said. When he was young. When his mother died. He got angry. He got bitter. He said things he didn't mean. He pushed people away. I thought he'd never come back. He came back, I said. He came back to me. Because you didn't give up on him. You stayed. You waited. You showed him that you loved him anyway. That's different, I said. That was Robert. That was before. Before what? Before I realized that I don't have to wait. That I don't have to stay. That I can walk away too. Rold looked at me for a long time.
His eyes were sad.
I could see the weight of Yaris in them, the weight of everything he'd never said. You can, he said. You can walk away. But Alice, I've been watching you for 40 years. I've seen you with those boys. I've seen how you loved them,
How you fought for them.
how you never gave up on them. And I know it's not in you to just walk away. HA rolled. I can't. I can't go back to the way things were. I can't pretend none of it happened. I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to remember. Remember who you are, remember who they are, remember that they're still your children, even when they act like idiots. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. But I couldn't, because he wasn't wrong. He was saying what I'd been thinking, what I'd been trying not to think. Call Michael, H.A. Rold said. Not for him.
For you.
For your own peace. Hear what he has to say. And then decide. I looked at my phone. It was sitting on the coffee table, dark and silent. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to hear Michael's voice. I didn't want to be swayed. Take a few days, H.A. Rold said. Think about it. But Alice, don't let your anger make your decisions for you. That's what Michael did. And look where it got him. He stood up. He winced again. His hand went to his knee. Stay, I said. I'll make you some breakfast. I don't want to impose. You're not imposing. You're family. That's what family does. I made him eggs and toast. We ate in silence. The kitchen was warm. The sun was coming through the window. It was the first meal I'd shared with anyone since the dinner that changed everything. To when he was done, he put his plate in the sink.
Thank you, Alice.
For the food. For listening. For being the woman Robert always said you were. Thank you, H.A. Rold. For coming. Take care of yourself, he said. I'll come back. We'll talk again. He left. I watched him walk to his truck. He moved slow, but steady. He'd always been that way. Slow and steady and always there, even when you didn't notice him. I closed the door. I leaned against it. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I didn't know why. I looked at my phone. I picked it up. I scrolled to Michael's name. My thumb hovered over the screen. That I didn't call him. Not yet. But I didn't put the phone down either. I just stood there, holding it sta ring at his name, that I thought about what H.A. Rold had said. About anger. About not letting it make decisions. I thought about Robert. How he'd pushed people away. How he'd come back. How I'd been the one who waited. I put down the phone. I walked to the kitchen and sta root cleaning up. I washed the dishes. I put them away. I wiped down the counters. Frank showed up at noon. He had his tools and his truck and his gentle smile. Ready to work, he asked. Ready? I said. He worked on the living room, sanding the floors, patching the walls. I worked in the bedroom, painting the blue walls a shade lighter. It was calming, rhythmic. The brush moving up and down, the paint covering the cracks. At 2 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Brian. Mom, I heard about everything.
Please call me.
I want to help. I typed back. I don't need help.
Ivy fine.
He texted again. Mom, please. I want to talk to you. I want to make things right. I thought about H.A. Rold's words. About not letting anger make decisions. I called him. Mom, he said.
His voice was relieved.
Mom, thank you for calling. Brian, I can't talk for long. That's okay. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For not being there. For not calling. For not doing more. Brian, you don't have to. I do. I know I do. I've been terrible. I've been selfish. I've been so focused on my own life that I forgot about you. And I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. I just listened. Michael called me, he said. He told me what happened. What he said. Mom, I can't believe he did that. I can't believe he said that to you. He did, I said.
He said it.
And I believed him. Mom, he's an idiot. He's always been an idiot. He doesn't think before he speaks. He doesn't know how to be. Brian, stop. I don't want you to defend me. And I don't want you to attack him. I just want you to listen.
Okay, he said. I'm listening.
I can't go back to the way things were. I can't pretend that nothing happened. I need time. I need space. I need to figure out who I am without being a mother. That's okay, he said. Take all the time you need. Thank you, I said. That's all I wanted to hear. I hung up. I sat down on the bed in my newly painted room. The blue was soft and calm, like the sea. I felt something shift inside me. Something loosen. I looked at my phone again. Michael's name was still there. I still didn't call him. But I didn't delete his number either. I had time. I had space. I had the house and the money and the Garden. And I had myself. That was enough. That was more than enough. The knock came at 3:47 a.m. I know because I was awake, STA ring at the ceiling, thinking about Robert. I'd been doing that a lot lately, waking up in the middle of the night and lying there in the dark, remembering that the knock was soft at first, hesitant, then louder, more urgent. That I got up. I pulled on my robe. I walked down the stairs with my heart pounding. The house was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. I opened the door and found Michael standing there. He looked terrible. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed. He was pale and shaking like he hadn't eaten or slept in days. His mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. "Michael," I said. "What are you doing here?" "I had to come," he said.
His voice was RSE.
"I couldn't stay away. I couldn't wait anymore. Go home. We'll talk about this later." "No." He shook his head. "No, I've been waiting. I've been waiting for days. I've been trying to find the right words. I've been trying to figure out what to say. But there are no right words. There's just the truth." I stood there, blocking the doorway. The cold air was seeping in, making me shiver. I could see my breath. I could see his. "Mom, I'm sorry."
"I'm so sorry."
What I said, I didn't mean it. I was angry. I was frustrated. I was taking everything out on you, and I shouldn't have.
"You did mean it," I said.
"You meant every word."
"No."
"I didn't. I swear I didn't. I was being an idiot. I was being cruel. I was being everything I didn't want to be. And I can't take it back. I know I can't. But I need you to know that I'm sorry." I looked at him. My son. The boy I'd held in my arms. The boy I'd rocked to sleep. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike and drive a car and how to treat a woman right.
He was broken now.
Broken and shaking and desperate. "Michael, come inside," I said. "It's cold out here."
He walked in.
He stood in the living room, his hands in his pockets. He looked around, like he was seeing the place for the first time. The new paint, the new floors, the changes I'd been making. "You're really doing it," he said. "You're really rebuilding." "I am. It looks good. It looks really good."
"Thank you."
We stood there in the silence. I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel. Robert's clock. The one he'd wound every Sunday, rain or shine. "Sit down," I said. "I'll make some tea." He sat on the couch. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. I took 2 mugs from the cabinet. I took the tea bags and the sugar and the milk. I moved slowly, deliberately.
I needed the time.
I needed to think. I brought the tea to the living room. Michael took his mug with trembling hands. He held it like it was the only thing keeping him warm. "Melissa left me," he said. "She packed her things and went to her mother's. She said she couldn't take it anymore. The stress, the fighting, the way I've been treating everyone." I wasn't surprised. I'd seen it coming. I'd seen the cracks in their marriage for years. The way they talked to each other. The way they looked at each other. The way they used each other. "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be." She was right to leave. I've been terrible. To her.
To you.
To everyone. "Michael, you're not terrible. You made a mistake. A big one. But you're not terrible. You don't understand. I've been so focused on money. On the wedding. On everything I thought I needed. And I forgot what really mattered. I forgot about you. I forgot about Brian. I forgot about all of it." "Then remember," I said. "Remember who you are. Remember who you want to be."
He looked at me.
His eyes were wet. He was crying. I'd seen him cry before, when he was a child, when he was a teenager, when he'd broken his arm and screamed for me to make it stop. But I'd never seen him cry like this. Like he was falling apart. Like he was losing himself. I called Brian, he said. I told him everything. He said he forgave me. He said he understood. But I don't think he does. I don't think anyone understands how sorry I am. Except you. Michael, I understand. I understand more than you think. I was angry. I was hurt. I felt like I'd been betrayed by the person I loved the most. And I didn't know what to do with that anger. Did you forgive me? I don't know, I said. I'm still figuring it out. But I know that I love you. I'll always love you. And I don't want to lose you. He put down his mug. He reached for my hand. His fingers were cold. I don't want to lose you either. I don't want to lose anyone. I feel like I'm losing everything. You're not losing everything, I said. You're Leah Running. You're growing. You're becoming a better person. And that's not easy. It's painful. It's hard. But it's worth it. He nodded. He wiped his eyes. He looked at me like I was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. Can I stay? He asked. Just for tonight. I don't want to go back to the house. It's empty. It's quiet. It reminds me of everything I did wrong. I thought about it. The house was big. There were extra rooms. I could give him a bed. I could give him a blanket. I could give him a place to rest. Okay, I said. Stay. But Michael, this doesn't fix everything. This doesn't make everything okay. I know, he said. I'm not trying to fix everything. I'm just trying to start. I showed him to the guest room. The one we'd kept for Brian. The one he'd never used. It was clean and simple. A bed. A dresser. A window that looked out onto the garden. Get some sleep, I said. We'll talk more in the morning. Thank you, Mom. For everything. I left him there. I walked back to my room. I sat on my bed and looked at the blue walls. The color was growing on me. It was peaceful. It was calm. I thought about Michael. The way he'd looked. The way he'd sounded. He was broken. But he was trying. He was trying to be better. And that meant something. That meant everything. That I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed and listened to the house. The creaks and groans. The hum of the refrigerator. The sound of my son breathing in the next room. At 6 a.m., I got up and root, making breakfast. I made eggs and bacon and toast. I made coffee and juice. I set the table and waited. Michael came down at 7. He looked better. Still tired. Still sad. But better. Sit down, I said. Eat something. He sat down. He ate slowly, like he wasn't used to it. Like he'd forgotten how. Melissa called, he said. She wants to come back. She wants to try again. But I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can go back to the way things were. You don't have to, I said. You can figure out what you want, what you need, and you can go from there. What do I want? He laughed, but it wasn't funny. I don't know. I've never known. I've just been going through the motions, doing what I thought I was supposed to do, and I don't know what that means anymore. It means you're figuring it out, I said. And that's okay. That's good. That's how you grow. He nodded. He kept eating. I kept drinking my coffee. Mom, do you ever wish you'd done things differently? He asked. Do you ever look back and wish you'd made different choices? I thought about it. I thought about the years I'd spent being a wife, a mother, a CA retaker. I thought about the sacrifices I'd made, the things I'd given up, the life I'd put on hold. I think everyone does, I said. I think everyone looks back and wonders what might have been. But I don't regret it. Not really. Because everything I did led me here. Led me to this moment. And I wouldn't change that for anything. He looked at me. His eyes were wet again. I want to be like that. I want to look back and not regret. I want to be someone my kids can be proud of. Then be that person, I said. It's not too late. It's never too late. He finished his breakfast. He put his plate in the sink. He walked over and hugged me. His arms were tight around me, like he was holding on to something precious. Thank you, Mom, he said. For everything. For never giving up on me. Michael, I'll never give up on you. No matter what. That's what it means to be a mother. He let go. He looked at me with something like hope in his eyes. I'll be better. I promise. I'll be the son you deserve. I already have the son I deserve, I said. You just have to see it. You have to believe it. He left that morning. He drove back to his house. His empty house. His house without Melissa. But he was different. He was lighter. He was someone who was trying. I called Brian that afternoon. I told him about Michael's visit. He said he was glad. He said he was coming home. He said he wanted to see me, to talk to me, to be with me. Mom, I've been thinking a lot. About everything. About what happened. About what I did wrong. Brian, you didn't do anything wrong. Yes, I did. I was gone. I was distant. I made you feel like you didn't matter. And I'm sorry. I know, I said. And I forgive you. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for always being there.
For always loving me.
For never giving up. Brian, I'll never give up on you. That's what mothers do. He came home the next weekend. He brought Stephanie. She was quiet and polite, and I could tell she was trying. She helped me with the jardin. She helped me with the kitchen. She helped me with everything. We had dinner together. Just the four of us. Me, Michael, Brian, and Stephanie. It was awkward at first. Stilted. But then the wine came out. The laughter came out. The memories came out. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was home. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. I was in the jardin, up to my elbows in soil, when I saw the mail truck pull up. Frank had just finished repairing the old stone pathway, and I was planting roses along the border. Robert's roses. The ones he'd tended so carefully for 30 years. I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked to the mailbox. The letter was thick. Official. The return address was a law firm I didn't recognize. I opened it standing there in the driveway. The sun was warm on my face. The birds were singing. It was the kind of day that made you forget everything bad that had ever happened. The letter was from Melissa's attorney. She was filing for divorce. She was asking for half of everything. The house. The savings. The retirement accounts. She was claiming that Michael had been emotionally abusive. That he'd driven her away. That she deserved compensation for the years she'd spent trying to make the marriage work. I read it twice. 3 times. I couldn't believe it. I called Michael. He answered on the first ring. Mom, he said. I know. I got one too. Michael, what is she doing? She's trying to take everything. She's trying to ruin me. She's trying to make sure I have nothing left. Did she really say you were abusive? There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing. I could hear the weight of his silence. Michael, tell me the truth. I wasn't abusive, he said. I was neglectful. I was distant. I put work ahead of her. I put money ahead of her. I put everything ahead of her. But I never hit her. I never screamed at her. I never did any of the things she's claiming. Then why is she doing this? Because she's angry. Because I left her. Because I chose you over her. That stopped me cold. What do you mean, you chose me? I told her I was coming to see you. I told her I was going to apologize. She said if I went, she'd leave. She said I had to choose between you and her. And I chose you. I chose my mother. I sat down on the front steps. The letter was still in my hand. The paper crumpled from my grip. Michael, you shouldn't have had to choose. I know, but I did. And I made the right choice. Does Brian know? I called him. He's coming home. He said he wants to be here for me. For us. I looked at the jardin. The roses were blooming. The pathway was new. The house was beautiful. Everything was coming together. And now this. Michael, come over. We'll figure this out together. I can't. I have to meet with my attorney. I have to fight this. Then I'll come to you. I'll be there. I'll support you. Mom, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. That's what family does. I hung up. I went inside and changed my clothes. I grabbed my keys and got in the car. The drive to Michael's house took 20 minutes. I'd made that drive 1,000 times. I'd watched the neighborhood change over the years. The old houses being torn down, the new ones going up. The trees getting taller. The streets getting busier. Everything changed. Nothing stayed the same. Except Michael's house. It was still the same. The same white siding. The same blue shutters. The same porch with the same welcome mat. I remembered the day he bought it. The pride in his eyes. The way he'd stood on the porch and told me he'd made it. He'd finally made it. I walked up to the front door and knocked at Michael opened it. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair unkempt. He was wearing the same shirt he'd been wearing the night he'd come to my house. "Mom," he said, "you didn't have to come." "Yes, I did.
You need me.
And I'm here." We sat in his living room. The furniture was still there. The photographs were still on the walls. But something was missing. Something was gone. The life had been drained out of the place. "She took everything," he said. "The wedding china. The silverware. The jewelry. Everything she could carry. She said she was taking what was hers." "The wedding china was yours. Your grandmother gave it to you." "I know. But she took it anyway. She said she deserved it." I felt the anger rising. It was the same anger I'd felt when Michael had called me a burden. The same white-hot fury that had made me pack my bags and walk out the door. But I pushed it down. I needed to be calm. I needed to be strong. "Michael, you can't let her do this. You can't let her take everything." "What am I supposed to do? She's got a lawyer. She's got a case. She's got a story. And everyone believes her. They all think I'm the bad guy." "Who's everyone?" "The neighbors. Our friends. Her family. They all think I drove her away. They all think I'm the one who ruined everything." I looked at my son. My broken, hurting son. He was drowning. He was losing everything. And I had to save him. "Michael, I'm going to help you. I'm going to get you a lawyer. I'm going to fight this with you." "Mom, you don't have the money. You don't have. I have the money. I have everything I need. And I'm going to use it to help you." He looked at me. His eyes were wet.
Why?
"Why would you do that after everything I did to you?" "Because you're my son. Because I love you. And because I know who you really are. You're not the man she's describing. You're not the man who called me a burden. You're the man who came to my house at 3 a.m. and told me he was sorry. You're the man who chose me over her. And I'm not going to let you lose everything." He sta root to cry. "Ukli, messi, soping dars." I held him. I held him like I'd held him when he was a boy. I told him it was going to be okay. I told him we were going to get through this together. The lawyer I hired was a woman named Karen. She was tough. She was SMART. She'd been recommended by Richa Road Thompson, and she'd handled dozens of high-profile divorces. She looked at the case and said she could win. "Your wife's claims are baseless," she told Michael. "She's trying to take advantage of your guilt. She's trying to make you pay for walking away. But we're going to fight her. And we're going to win." "How long will it take?" Michael asked. "Months. Maybe a year. But we'll get through it." I sat in on the meetings. I listened.
I learned.
I watched my son transform from a broken man into a fighter. He was finding himself. He was becoming the person I'd always known he could be. Brian came home. He stayed with me in the yellow room. No, the blue room now. The room I'd painted.
The room that was mine.
He helped with the garden. He helped with the house. He helped with Michael. "You've changed," Brian said one night. "You're not the same person you were." "Good," I said. I wasn't happy with who I was. "Who are you now?" I thought about it. I thought about everything that had happened. The fight, the betrayal, the reconciliation, the rebuilding. "I'm someone who knows what she wants," I said. "Someone who knows her worth. Someone who's not going to let anyone walk all over her again." Brian smiled. "I like this version of you. I like her too." The divorce proceedings dragged on. Melissa's lawyer tried everything. Accusations. Threats. Offers of settlement. But Karen stood firm. She fought for Michael. She fought for what was his. And in the end, she won. Michael kept the house. He kept the savings. He kept the retirement accounts. Melissa got a settlement, but it was a fraction of what she'd asked for. "She's not coming back," Michael said when it was over. "She's not even going to try." "Good," I said. "You deserve someone better. Someone who loves you for who you are. Someone like Dad," he said. "Someone who loves you the way Dad loved you." I smiled.
Yes.
Someone like that. Michael came to the house for dinner that night. We had pot roast, the same recipe I'd made the night everything fell apart. The night he'd called me a burden. The night I'd walked out the door. He took a bite and closed his eyes.
This is good, Mom.
Really good. I know, I said. I made it. We laughed. We ate. We talked about the future. Michael was rooting over. Brian was getting Ma a ride. Stephanie was pregnant. And I was going to be a grandmother again. Mom, Michael said, I've been thinking about everything that happened. About how I treated you. About how I made you feel. And I want to say it again. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Michael, you've already said it. You've already made it right. I know. But I want you to know that I'll never forget it. I'll never forget what I did. And I'll never stop trying to make it up to you. Then let's move forward, I said. Let's focus on the future. Let's focus on what comes next. I looked at my sons. My beautiful, flawed, imperfect sons. They'd hurt me. They'd disappointed me. But they'd also loved me. They'd fought for me. They'd come back to me. And that was enough. That was everything. The phone rang at 11:47 p.m. I was already in bed, reading an old novel Robert had left on the nightstand. The ring cut through the quiet like a knife, and I knew before I answered that something was wrong. Mom. Michael's voice was strangled. Mom, it's Brian. He's been in an accident. I don't remember getting out of bed. I don't remember grabbing my keys or my purse or my coat. I just remember the drive to the hospital, the way the streetlights blurred past, the way my hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The emergency room was chaos. Bright lights. HARSH sounds. People in scrubs moving with purpose. I found Michael in the waiting array, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Michael, I said. What happened? He was driving home from work. A drunk driver. Ran a red light. T-boned him on the driver's side. Where is he? Is he okay? They won't tell me anything. They just said to wait. They said the doctor would come out when they knew more. I sat down next to him. I took his hand. His fingers were cold and trembling. Stephanie is on her way, he said. She was at her mother's. She's driving in from the city. How bad is it? Michael, tell me the truth. I don't know.
I don't know anything.
They just keep saying he's in surgery. That's all they'll tell me. We waited. The minutes stretched into hours. I watched the clock on the wall, the hands moving impossibly slow. I thought about Brian, the day he was born, the way he'd looked up at me with those big, curious eyes, the way he'd taken his first steps, reaching for me with chubby hands, the way he'd left for college, waving from the CAR, promising to call, and now he was in surgery, fighting for his life. And there was nothing I could do but wait. Stephanie arrived at 2 a.m. She was pale and shaking, her eyes red from crying. Michael stood up and hugged her. I watched them cling to each other. Two broken people holding on to whatever they could. Where is he? Stephanie asked. What happened? Is he going to be okay? We don't know, Michael said. We're still waiting. We waited some more. The sun route to rise. The lights in the waiting room flickered. A nurse came out and said we could see him. He was out of surgery. He was stable. But he wasn't awake. He's in a coma, the doctor said. The trauma to his head was significant. We've done everything we can. Now, we have to wait.
What does that mean? I asked.
What does that mean for him? It means we don't know yet. The next 48 hours are critical. If he wakes up, there's a good chance he'll recover. If he doesn't, he trailed off. He didn't need to finish. We went to see him. He was in a room with machines beeping and wires everywhere. His face was bruised, swollen. His head was wrapped in bandages. He looked so small, so fragile. He looked like the little boy I'd rocked to sleep. Stephanie sat next to him, holding his hand. She talked to him, her voice soft and broken. Brian, it's me. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You have to wake up. You have to come back to us. I stood in the doorway. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I watched my son lying there, and I felt something inside me crack. Mom. Michael's hand was on my shoulder. Mom, are you okay? I'm fine, I said.
I'm fine.
But I wasn't fine. I was falling apart. The next 2 days were a blur. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just sat in that room, watching Brian, watching the machines, watching the rise and fall of his chest. I talked to him too. I told him about the GA Reden, the roses, the new pathway. I told him about Robert, about how proud he'd be. I told him about the baby, the grandchild he hadn't met yet. You have to wake up, Brian, I said. You have to see your child. You have to be there for them. You have to be there for Stephanie. You have to be there for me. On the third day, his eyes fluttered open. I was the only one in the room. Stephanie had gone to get coffee. Michael was in the hallway making calls. I was sitting in the chair next to the bed, holding his hand. Brian, I said. Brian, can you hear me? He blinked. His eyes were unfocused, confused. But they were open. He was looking at me. Mom, he said. His voice was a whisper. What happened? You were in an accident. A drunk driver. But you're going to be okay. You're going to be just fine. He tried to smile. It came out as a grimace.
I'm tired.
I know.
Rest.
I'll be here. I'll always be here. He fell back asleep. But he was alive. He was awake. He was going to be okay. The doctors were optimistic. The coma hadn't been as deep as they'd read. He was responding to stimuli. He was recognizing people. He was talking, even if it was just a few words at a time. He's going to be fine, the doctor said. It's going to be a long recovery. Months of therapy. Maybe a RS. But he's going to be fine. I called Stephanie. I called Michael. I told them the news. We cried together. We held each other. We thanked God, or fate, or whatever force had brought him back. Michael stayed with me at the house. He was afraid to be alone. He said the silence was too loud. I didn't argue. I needed him too, that we spent the days at the hospital. We took turns sitting with Brian.
We talked to him.
We read to him. We told him about the baby, the grandchild who was coming, the grandchild who would know him. Mom, Michael said one night, I've been thinking about everything that happened, about how I treated you, about how I almost lost you, and now Brian almost died. And I just keep thinking about how short life is, how fragile everything is. It is, I said. But that's why we have to hold on to what matters. That's why we have to fight for the people we love. I know, and I'm going to fight. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be the person you deserve. Michael, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. You just have to be there. He nodded. He hugged me. I hugged him back. We stood there in the hallway of the hospital, holding on to each other. Brian came home after 6 weeks.
He was still weak.
Still fragile. But he was walking. He was talking. He was laughing. He was alive. Stephanie moved in with him. She took care of him. She helped him with his therapy. She cared for him. She loved him. I went to visit every day. I brought food. I brought books. I brought stories from the GA Reden, the roses, the new pathway. I brought Robert in the way I talked about him, in the way I remembered him. Mom, Brian said one afternoon, I'm sorry for everything. For not being there. For not calling. For making you feel like you didn't matter. Brian, you've apologized enough.
You're here now.
That's what matters. I know. But I want you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm never going to let you go again. Good, I said. Because I'm not going anywhere. We talked about the wedding. It was still going to happen, but it was going to be smaller. More intimate. A backyard wedding at the house. The GA Reden would be in full bloom. The roses would be perfect. It's what Dad would have wanted, Brian said. Something simple. Something beautiful. Something that meant something. Yes, I said. That's exactly what he would have wanted. The wedding was in June. The GA Reden was spectacular. Frank had helped me prepare it. He'd planted new flowers. He'd trimmed the hedges. He built a small archway for the ceremony. Stephanie wore a simple white dress. Brian wore a suit. Michael was his best man. I was the mother of the groom. We stood in the GA Reden, under the archway, and watched them say their vows. I love you, Brian said. I've always loved you. And I promise to always be there for you. To always fight for you. To always love you. I love you too, Stephanie said. And I promise to always be your partner. Your friend. Your wife. They kissed. We clapped. We cried. We celebrated. The reception was small.
Just family.
Just friends. We had pot roast and mashed potatoes and green beans. We had lemon meringue pie. I'd made it myself. This is the best pie I've ever had, Brian said. Better than the one I missed. You didn't miss it, I said. It's right here. It's always been right here. Michael raised his glass.
To Mom.
To the woman who never gave up on us. To the woman who taught us what it means to love. To Mom, everyone said that I looked at my sons. My beautiful, flawed, imperfect sons. They'd hurt me. They'd disappointed me.
But they'd also loved me.
They'd fought for me. They'd come back to me, And that was enough. That was everything. The first day of autumn came with a chill that reminded me of the morning I'd walked out the door with my documents and my secrets. The leaves were rooting to turn. The GA Ruden was going dormant. And I was standing on the back porch, watching the sun rise over the house I'd fought to keep. I heard footsteps behind me. Michael Ape read with 2 mugs of coffee. He handed me one and stood beside me, looking out at the GA Ruden. You're up, EARLY, he said. Couldn't sleep. Thinking too much. About what? About everything. About how different things are now. About how I never thought I'd be here. He nodded. He took a sip of his coffee. You know, I've been thinking a lot about that night. The night I called you that word. I've replayed it 1,000 times in my head. I can't believe I said it. I can't believe I was so cruel. Michael, we've talked about this. It's over. You've made it right. I know.
But I still think about it.
I still wonder how I could have been so blind. So selfish. Because you were SCA red, I said. Because you thought you were losing control. Because you thought you had to hold on to everything so tightly that you couldn't see what you were holding on to was already slipping away. He was quiet for a long time. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just never listened.
He laughed.
It was a real laugh, and genuine. You're right. I didn't listen.
I didn't see.
I was too busy trying to prove something. What were you trying to prove? That I wasn't like Dad. That I could do it on my own. That I didn't need anyone. He shook his head. But I was wrong. I did need you. I still need you. And I'm finally okay with that. We stood there in the cold morning air, watching the sun climb higher. The sky was turning pink and orange. The birds were rooting to sing. Brian called. Michael said. The baby is doing well. Stephanie's due next month. He's already read out the nursery.
I know. He told me yesterday.
He sent me pictures of the furniture. He's excited. They both agree. They're going to be great parents. Yes, I said. They agree. We finished our coffee in comfortable silence. The GA Ruden was quiet. The house was quiet. Everything was exactly as it should be. I'm moving back into my house next week, Michael said. I've been staying at a hotel since everything happened. But I'm ready. I want to be on my own again. Sure you're welcome to stay here as long as you need. I'm sure. It's time. Time to start over. Time to figure out who I am without her. And who are you without her, he smiled. It was a new smile. A different smile. It was the smile of a man who'd been through the fire and come out the other side. I don't know yet, but I'm looking forward to finding out. We walked back inside. Root making breakfast. Michael set the table. He'd become good at that. Good at helping. Good at being present. Mom, he said, there's something I want to show you. He pulled a letter out of his pocket. It was old.
Worn.
The paper was yellowed, the handwriting familiar. Dad wrote this, he said. I found it in a box of his things.
I think he meant for me to have it.
I took the letter. I read it. My hands were shaking. Michael, if you're reading this, I'm sorry I didn't tell you the truth. I should have. I should have told you about the trust. I should have told you about your mother. But I was afraid. Afraid of what you'd do. Afraid of what you'd become. I loved you too much to see you fail.
So I kept the secret.
I kept it for her. For you. For all of us. I hope you can forgive me. I hope you can forgive yourself. Love, Dad. Michael was crying. So was Ida. He knew, I said. He knew it would happen. He knew you'd struggle. He knew you'd make mistakes. And he still loved you.
I know, Michael said.
That's what makes it so hard. He loved me so much, and I didn't deserve it. You deserved it. You always deserved it. You just had to learn how to accept it. He hugged me. I hugged him back. We stood there in the kitchen, holding on to each other. I'm going to be a better man, he said. I'm going to be the man Dad thought I could be. I'm going to make you proud. Michael, you already make me proud. You've always made me proud. You just didn't see it. He let go. He wiped his eyes. He smiled that new smile again. I'm going to go, he said. I've got a lot of work to do, but I'll be back. I'll always be back. He left. I watched him go. I watched his car disappear down the street. I watched until I couldn't see it anymore, then I went back inside. I sat in Robert's chair. I closed my eyes. I could feel him there. I could feel his presence. I could feel his love. You did good, he said. You did really good. I couldn't have done it without you. I said, yes, you could have. You just didn't know it yet. I opened my eyes. The room was quiet. The sun was streaming through the window. The house was still. It was the kind of stillness that felt like peace. I picked up the letter. I read it again. I folded it carefully and tucked it into the pocket of my robe. I walked to the garden. The roses were still blooming, a few last flowers hanging on before winter came. I knelt down and touched one of them. It was soft, fragile, beautiful. I'll take care of them, I said. I'll take care of all of it. I stood up. I looked at the house I'd fought for, the house I'd bought back, the house that was mine. I thought about everything that had happened.
The pain.
The betrayal. The anger. The forgiveness. The love. It had all led me here. To this moment. To this garden. To this life that I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if Michael would find happiness. I didn't know if Brian's baby would be healthy. I didn't know if the roses would survive the winter. But I knew one thing. I knew I was going to be okay. I walked back inside. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the blueprints I'd been working on. The renovations were almost done. The house was almost perfect, but it wasn't the house that had changed. It was me. I had changed. I had become someone new. Someone stronger. Someone who knew her worth. And that was the greatest renovation of all.